Hey, Mike. How you doing, buddy? I'm running late. Sorry. I do apologize. Just getting myself sorted out here. It's still pretty cold here in Edinburgh, but the snow is melting, which is very cool. Very pleased about that. Finally, it's been a long week, but a good week. So yeah, I'm just still getting myself organized. Let me just get my laptop going. Oh, didn't want to do that. That's the button I want to press. There we go. Sean Aaron is here, and good old Just Bob. Hello, Johnny, and all the Lipsters out there, and Stephen Greenwood just dropping in to say hello in the middle of tracking drums. Well, good of you to drop in, Stephen. Really appreciate it, mate. Thank you for coming. Hope your tracking session with drums goes really well. Make sure your drummer plays some nice flam tap paradiddles for me, and maybe an inverted Ratamacu or two. One of those would always go down well, especially on a rock and roll track. Alrighty, I need to make sure I set that to live chat and not top chat, because then I don't see everything, which is a bit of a pain. And Beatrice is here, so we got 10 people-ish in the room just now. So yeah, welcome to my regular Sunday night stream. It is 4 minutes past midnight here on a cold Sunday night, although not as cold as the last 3 or 4 days have been. The last 3 or 4 days have been extremely cold. You know, when you add the wind in and everything else, it's felt like it's about minus 15 degrees centigrade, which is extremely cold. So we've had more snow in the last week than we have had in the last 8 years, I would say. We've had well over 1.5 feet of snow, and in some parts of the local surrounding area to Edinburgh, it's been much more than that. It's been like 3 or 4 feet deep, which is just insane. It's been knee deep here in southeast of Edinburgh. We're kind of on the outskirts. If you were to look at a map of Edinburgh and you look at the southeastern outskirts of Edinburgh, that is where we are currently. I'll explain what I mean by currently in a short while. Unfortunately, during the course of activities this week with the kids, we went snowboarding on Saturday, and I took a little bit of a tumble. And I've got an absolute corker of a cut and a bruise on my forehead, which is great, you know, because now everybody's going to be fixated on looking at that. Sorry about that. But yeah, I managed to headbutt a snowboard when I was going down pretty steep slope. It must have been about that kind of angle. And I must have been going a good 30 miles an hour or so, and managed to end up headbutting the snowboard that I had been standing on. So not clever. So, but it was fun though. And the kids had an absolute blast and got themselves very, very, very worn out, which is perfect, which is exactly what the doctor ordered. But my good friend, the Rocker, aka Rich, is here. Rich is an extremely good friend of mine, and it's very good to see you here, mate. And you're grilling your dinner, which is very cool. I hope you enjoy your dinner and your half here. That's cool. Well, half is good. I'll take that. A few people are here saying congratulations on passing 1,000 subscribers. Yes, thank you very much for that, guys. Yes, I have finally reached that milestone. Now, here's the interesting thing. The interesting thing is that 7 months ago, I only just went past 200 subscribers, and then it's just gone like crazy. I've been averaging 60-70 subscribers a week or so, and it's just been amazing. So thank you so much, everybody, for becoming a subscriber to my YouTube channel. It means the world to me. And I know I said that on my video that I did celebrating the going past the 1,000 subscriber mark. Cool thing about going past the, or at least it used to be the cool thing. You went past 1,000 subscribers, you got eligibility for sponsorship for your YouTube channel and super chat and fun stuff like that. However, unfortunately, as I approached my 1,000 subscribers, YouTube changed the rules. So now not only do I need to get to 1,000 subscribers, I also need to get to 4,000 watch hours in the previous 12 months. So it's like 12 months in arrears. They look at it 12 months in arrears, and they look at how many watch hours you had, and they work out, okay, if you're over 4,000, then yes, you get eligible, you get all the monetization and everything else. I used to have nice monetization, and each of my videos would make me, make me a few dollars. But now they don't make me anything because they took all of that away. And it's all because some idiot made an extremely inappropriate video go extremely viral, and thousands upon thousands of people saw that video, and he had monetized that video, which made advertisers very unhappy because they did not want their brands associated with that particular video. So they got upset with YouTube, and YouTube said, right, okay, we're changing the rules. We're going to make it much harder now. So there you go. There it is. So let's see. Who do we have here? Robert Overbeek is here. Good to see you, Robert, my good friend. And Just Bob and Frank Wagner is here. Thank you very much for coming. And he says, hi, everyone. Dietrich is giving me rounds of applause, which is very nice. Idiot isn't the word I would use. Are you referring to me headbutting the snowboard? Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Robert Overbeek says, opinions on where Band Lab is going with Cakewalk. Yeah, I think it's a little too soon to say just yet. I think we're going to have to keep an eye on where they're going with that and watch how that develops. However, on the other hand, I'm also very, very glad for all of the Sonar users out there who kind of like found themselves, without support for their DAW. And a lot of people have been using that for 30 years. So they had no support anymore and no prospect that any of the issues with the software, the bugs and things that were in it, not that there were that many, it was actually a pretty stable DAW, to be honest. But they found that okay, that's no longer going to be supported, and Gibson had dropped the ball completely with it. So I'm very glad that somebody basically took the plunge and said, hey, we'll buy it, and we will re-employ its development team from Gibson, which is great. I'm very pleased to hear that, and I wish BandLab all the very best with all the Cakewalk products. I hope it does really well for them and for the users as well. So as great as it has been to see a lot of Sonar users come over to Studio One, that's really, really great as well. And Stereolab says, I'm ex-Sonar and would never go back. Well, I really appreciate that, Stereolab. I really do. And I'm glad that you've decided, hey, Studio One is the door for me now. So that's great. But, I know there's a lot of people that kind of, they were just, they're probably breathing a sigh of relief that now their DAW that they're most familiar with is, is going to be supported by and developed a bit more now, which is great. So MJN says, no, the idiot on YouTube with that lousy post. Yeah, you're not kidding. You're absolutely not kidding. Because it means, smaller content creators like me at the moment, I'm envisaging becoming much, much larger. Maybe not quite Graham Cochran sized larger, but large enough that, I can build something that is going to be good for all of my subscribers, something that is going to benefit them more than anything else. That's the most important thing. Most important thing is the content that you guys get is the best content that I can possibly make. And actually serves you and serves you well. If I'm doing that, everything, it doesn't really matter to me how many subscribers I have, so long as I have a bunch of subscribers that are happy with the content that I create and it benefits them, and they get a lot out of it. So Just Bob says, can you use Patreon? I could. It is something I have thought about for sure. But I am developing a VIP membership scheme for my business, for my website, which hopefully will give you guys, if you decide that you want to sign up and join, will give you guys, kind of like a whole bunch of content that is going to be in a lot more depth than what I could go into on a video for YouTube. YouTube videos take time to make, and they take effort, and it's business hours that I have to put into that, and how much is my time worth financially? I have to weigh all those things up. Plus, what I want to do is I want to create really, really top-notch content that is going to go into a lot of depth on the issues that you guys are dealing with, the things that you want to learn, the areas of music production that you want to grow at, whatever end of the spectrum that is, whether that's getting better at writing songs or whether it's, developing your mastering skills, and everything in between those 2 points. I want to create the best learning resources possible that are going to help you guys. And yeah, that's going to take time. And so that's why I'm creating the VIP membership, because it'll give you guys access to me personally. We can do one-on-ones. We can do mix critiques for cheaper than I do them as a standalone product. So there's a whole bunch you get. And I think I've kind of alluded to some of it before in previous streams, and I will keep alluding to it, by the way, folks. But once everything is a bit more fleshed out and there's something for you guys to see in terms of what this is going to look like, I will do a special stream and we can look at it all. Okay. So let's see. Robert Overbeek says, agreed, Stereolab. After 10 years, I came to Studio One and love it. Well, that's very, very cool. Frank Wagner says, I was with Sonar from the very beginning, now Studio One Professional 3.5 and moving on. Well, that's fantastic. So that's really cool. And Bruce is giving a shout out to Sean Aaron, which is very cool. And I'm just going to quickly bob up and see if I've missed anything, which it doesn't look like I have just now. Stereolab, you're in the gym. Well, good for you, mate. And you're listening to me there. That's fantastic. I wish I could go to the gym. Boy, I tell you, I need to. But sadly, my knees would just not take the strain anymore. So pretty much my cartilage is wasted away to almost none. So there's not a lot I can do about that. I am on a waiting list to have some explorative surgery to see if my knees need replaced. And then if they decide that that's the case, then they'll put me on another waiting list, and that waiting list will be for the actual surgery itself. So who knows how long I have to put up with my incredibly painful knees, but we'll see. I'm a happy guy. So it's just something I have to live with. All right, I'm going to stop waffling because we've got 14 people in here now. And we're 16 minutes in roughly. Let's get your questions. So Stereolab says, having problem connecting my hardware synth to Studio One. Common issue with Studio One. Hardware synth. Depends how you're trying to connect it, to be honest. If you're wanting to connect it via MIDI, for example, and you've got, the standard old-fashioned 5-pin MIDI cable, you put the cable into the back of your interface if it has MIDI ports. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to get one of those MIDI to USB hubs that you can get. And you plug into that, and then what you do in Studio One is you add it as a new keyboard. Martin Weeks is here. Good to see you, mate. He says, Sent you a question via PM yesterday. I'll have to go and take a look at that in just a minute, Martin. To be honest, this week has been ridiculously busy because I've had the kids here because schools have been off, and then yesterday we all went snowboarding and I hurt myself. So that's that. 6JL, the knees. Not sure what that means, Stereolab, I'm afraid. Oh, sucks. Okay. Gotcha. It sucks. Yes, it does. It's pretty sore. I have to use pain relief pretty much every day, but that's okay. I know some people who suffer through a lot more every single day, and for them there is no end in sight. There is no kind of recovery. They're not necessarily going to get fully recovered, fully better. So and you know what, they are my heroes personally, because they take a lot, they put up with a lot, and the individuals that I'm thinking of in particular, they're going to remain completely anonymous because it's not fair to them, but they are able to continue laughing, continue smiling, and continue to help people and bless people, and that must be so hard. So I'm very, very, very fortunate that the only part of my body that doesn't really work very well is my knees. Everything else is fine. So there we go. Stereolab says, tried it with MIDI port, doesn't work. Looks like a Skype with JG is in the offing. Maybe. It could well be. So I'm assuming by what you've said there that your interface does not have MIDI inputs directly into it. There are some MIDI ports that work really, really well and some that don't. It is a little bit hit and miss. You're going to have to do a little research and have a look at what actually really does work. And it also has to. Oh, it does. It does have inputs. Well, in that case, you don't need a MIDI port. Just stuff it into the back of your interface. That's what I do. I have this old guy here. I mean, it's not an analog synth by any stretch of the imagination. It's a MIDI synth, but I basically just run a standard MIDI cable out the back into the back of my interface. And then in Studio One, I have just created it as a new instrument. There's no template for this guy because this guy predates Presonus, in fact. This keyboard is older than Presonus. So that's what you do. You even if there's no, when you're creating a new keyboard, you'll get this list of different possibilities that you can try, different templates that there are, different keyboards, and yours might not be among them. Mine isn't, so I had to create it and name it, and I just named it Yamaha QS300 because that's what this guy is. And then you have to just set up what MIDI channels it's going to send and receive from. I think in my case, I just have it to set up to receive from all channels and send to all channels, albeit this is just a one-way cable. It's just going from the out to the in of my interface, because I'm not wanting the sounds of this guy. I'm just wanting to use this as a controller. I have no interest in using these incredibly old and crap sounds. So, sorry, Stairmaster and typing doesn't work. Yes, yeah, I totally get that. You tried it every day. Yeah, that's the way you. To my mind, that's the way you do it. You create it as a new instrument, and you have to make sure that the MIDI send and receive is correct. You might also experiment with, in the system of your keyboard, check whether you have MIDI global on or off. Some keyboards you need it on, some keyboards you need it off for it to communicate properly with your MIDI interface, whatever that is. In my case, it's the AudioBox USB, but I don't know what interface you have. But that should in theory work. Tried all possible manifestations and nothing. I think it's Skype time. Yeah, definitely get in touch with Jonny. Jonny really knows his stuff, and he has a whole bunch of MIDI devices hooked up to his computer. So if he can do it, anybody can do it. And I think he uses a couple of MIDI ports as well, because I think he's maxed out all of his interface MIDI inputs. So sorry I couldn't help you specifically here, but certainly give that a try, creating it as a new keyboard. That might help. And you're using the Steinberg UR22. Okay. Yeah, that might be part of the issue. I'm not 100% sure because I do know some Steinberg interfaces, but that one I don't know. I think maybe that one's the equivalent of the AudioBox USB, but I'm not sure. Robert Overbeek says, this is so amateur. That's okay. Amateur is fine. Amateur is absolutely fine. You know, we all started there at one time. Let's see. So you say, how do I highlight multiple tracks in Studio One 3.5 to bounce them? Are you talking about the audio events, or are you talking about channels in the mixer? Because if you're talking about stems, if you're talking about the actual events, here I think is what you do. What you need to do is highlight those tracks. So go to the tracks where the record and monitor buttons are, and select those tracks. It's instrument tracks, and you want to convert them to audio. Is that right? Is that what you wanted to do? But you wanted to do it multiple times? Oh, multiple tracks at once, like drums, for example. I think with instrument tracks, I think you need to do them one at a time. If it's drums and you've got like an electric drum kit, you may need to explode your MIDI track, if you like, to pitches, I think, so that each drum is on a different track. If that's the case. Hey, Bobby Booth is here. You may need to do that, and then once each individual pitch, so your snare drum, your rack toms, your floor tom, your crash cymbals, once they are on their own individual tracks, then what you can do is you select each one and do Control B. That will then convert that MIDI into an audio file. But then if you want to make that a stereo file, then you just select all tracks and you right click and then you do mix down selection, and it will mix down all of those into one stereo file. Depends what you want to do. So I hope that helps, Robert. Give those things a try. Martin says, I have a box called MIDI Sport made by a company called MIDI Man. It's a MIDI in-out hub with USB to computer. Used it for years with my XP60. Yes, I think that's the one that Jonny has as well. Jonny Geib has a couple of those, I think. And they definitely seem to work very well. Those are the ones that I have seen that work the best, actually. And certainly they are the ones that have the best reviews. So we've got 15 people in the room here now, and we are 25 minutes in. Just Bob says, gonna have to watch the rest later. Keep losing signal. Driving in open country, no Wi-Fi. No problem, Just Bob. Catch the replay. Now, unless I'm much mistaken, actually, speaking of replays, unless I'm much mistaken, and I might be, and maybe one of you guys can get in touch with me when you're watching the replay and let me know whether this is true or not, but I believe YouTube have added a new feature. So when you're watching the replay of, for example, this stream, I believe you can also watch the chat replay. I believe you can now. I think I saw a little dialog box pop up when I was setting up the stream. So if somebody could actually watch the replay at the end of this show and then drop me a PM in Facebook or an email to johnny@johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk and let me know if that feature actually does exist and does work or doesn't. Either would be good. Bobby Booth says, does anyone know anything about a Cruise bass guitar? Cruise? I don't think I've ever heard of them, I'm afraid. They may be. I don't know. I don't know anything about them. Maybe they're a low budget manufacturer. I have no idea. I am sorry about that, Bobby. You may need to just go and Google that one, I'm afraid. Paul Lucas is here. Good to see you, Paul. Thanks for coming in. So we've got 14 people. We seem to be losing a few, which is a bit of a shame. But yes, let me just take a quick cup of tea break, and then we will... Oh, there you go. Frank says, yes, they have a scroll of the text from the show with timelines. That is awesome. That is a feature request that's been... I don't know, it's been forever. For a long, long time. Us guys that do live streams, we've been badgering YouTube to make that possible, because hitherto it wouldn't happen. So that must be one of the new updates to YouTube. I think there's a whole bunch of new updates to YouTube coming, and I think one of them is going to be 4K and even 8K. I think might be a resolution that is going to become possible on YouTube very soon. So, not that I actually could do 4K. Not a chance. And really, who would want to see me in 4K? No. Nobody wants to see me in 4K. But certainly for doing my regular screen capture videos, then yes, maybe, because you get much better resolution for looking at Studio One and other plugins and that kind of stuff. MJN is here, and he says Cruise makes entry-level guitars. My nephew has one. There you go. Not sure if they make pro-level guitars. Yeah, I've never heard of them. And I'm fairly familiar with a number of pro-level bass manufacturers, seeing as I frequent bass guitar stores a lot, regularly, mostly because I'm always on the lookout for new pickups or new strings. I'm just interested in strings in particular, but I actually get my strings made for me, which is nice, by a guy in South Africa. He hand makes all of my strings. So both my basses have his strings on, and I've got boxes and boxes of strings. Bobby says, I heard they were made in the 80s. Yeah, I've never heard of them. So there we go. Sorry about that. All right, any more questions regarding music production from one end to the other? Songwriting all the way through recording, mixing, mastering, and digital release. So either end of the spectrum or anywhere in that whole spectrum, I'm happy to answer your questions. And you know what? Really doesn't matter how basic they are. You know, if you are somebody that is very amateur and pretty new to recording in the digital audio world, or you're very new to Studio One in particular, then get your questions in. I started doing a Studio One from scratch series just recently, a few weeks ago. And the idea behind that series, if you've not seen it already, go check it out, is that I'm aiming it at people who have not really recorded in the digital domain before. And you know, they've just purchased a DAW. It doesn't really matter what DAW they have to watch the series, but it is called Studio One from scratch, so it's aimed at people who have never used a DAW before, and they have just purchased Studio One. or they bought an interface and Studio One came with their interface. So hopefully this will get you right into it. So that's the general idea of that series. So if that's where you're at, then go check that out. Bobby says, "How's your VIP going?" Yeah, we're still building it and overcoming one or two little obstacles. And not only are we building this VIP membership scheme, and we're building out the lounge and the forum and all the other areas that VIPs will get access to. And I'm working on some of the content that's going to be there ready for you when you get in, when we launch it. Not only are we doing all of that, but we're actually going to completely overhaul the website as well and give it a fresh lick of paint so that it looks a bit cooler and a bit less plain Jane than it does at the moment. I mean, there's nothing wrong with my website. You know, it's okay. It you know, when I built it, it did the job, but now I'm kind of entering into a new phase. I need a new website, so I need something that's a bit fresher looking. So we're still working on that, and it's coming together pretty well. And we're hoping that we can release the whole thing, website and VIP membership, pretty soon, actually, because pace is picking up. StereoLab62 says, lots of dropouts for me recently on Studio One. Notice my old computer is sluggish of late. I don't have a separate dedicated computer for music. I think that's the issue. That could well be the issue. Have a look and see how full your C drive is becoming, because it's entirely possible that you are recording to the same drive that all of your applications are on. And quite often, the drive that your applications are on is also the drive where things like your photos, your videos and movies and all that kind of stuff could well be on the same drive. So if you've got all of those, plus you've got Studio One on that same drive, plus you're recording to that drive and you're saving your songs on that drive, then yes, it's going to quickly, that drive is going to get quickly very full. And the fuller that drive is, the harder that drive has to work to keep on finding all the relevant bits of information to keep them going. For example, to keep your OS running smoothly, to keep the application that you have open running smoothly, it has to keep referencing your drive. And if you are recording to that drive and you're saving your projects to that drive, then you're going to create a bottleneck. You'll get traffic going like that all the time. Is two-way traffic to one drive. That's not going to be good for the computer, and it's not going to be good for the hard drive, because you will wear it out very quickly. And when that happens, that will not be good at all. So what I recommend you do is you maybe clear out that computer. I know you say it's not dedicated for music right now. Well, you know what? Neither's this computer particularly, because I use this computer for business. So it's dedicated for my business. And so to some degree, it is dedicated to music, but I have to use this computer for making my screen capture videos and some of my other tutorial products. So I'm making a lot of video and I'm rendering a lot of video, which is not necessarily what this computer was designed to do. So I'm kind of making my computer overwork a little bit as well. So I know kind of, I know how you feel. So it's really important that you keep your C drive, your system drive, as clean and as clear as you possibly can. That will mean that you will need to be saving and writing your songs to a different drive, which is what I do. So when I'm in Studio One, all my songs are stored on a different drive altogether, which means I'm writing to and streaming from only that drive and not from my C drive, which means my C drive can just get on with the job of running Studio One and keeping the computer actually running, the operating system actually running. So, and also what I would suggest is that maybe you do something like dump all of your photos, your personal stuff, personal videos, movies, whatever else you've got on that computer, dump that to another external hard drive. Just get it right off the computer. Get it off your C drive. So your C drive literally just has your applications on it. Let's see. Stereolab says, right, too much, although I don't have a lot of clutter on it, but yes, need a dedicated music computer. It will help. It will definitely help because, you know, you'll have a lot less crap on your computer. But if your computer is not dedicated for music and you do other things with it, like you have a film library, or you have CDs on there, or you have a music library, whatever, get those off and get them onto a separate drive. So that if you've got clutter, you've got that clutter on a different drive altogether. So it's, in that sense, separate from your computer. And Bobby Booth says the same thing. He says, get an external hard drive. It'll help you. It's no photos, no movies, minimal clutter, just 4 years old. Well, you know what? It could just simply be age has wearied your computer a little bit. It does happen. My computer is a 2014 computer, built in November of 2014. So it's only just over 3 years old. So I'm aware that it's getting older, and eventually it will be at a point where I'm going to have to either replace the entire machine. I mean, I'm kind of getting there because, you know, I'm doing a lot more video now than I thought I ever would. And so because of that, I'm probably going to have to replace my video card. Because I have worn that sucker out because it's doing things that it's not designed to do. Let's see. Frank says, I've seen over the years, keep register clean malware virus up to date. I run cleaners weekly. It keeps the PC running smooth. Yeah, those things will definitely all help as well. Because the computer can get a little bit Swiss cheese sometimes. Defrag the hard drive. Yes, that's something else that's actually pretty important. Just don't do what I did the last time I defragged a hard drive. And I did it to my wife. I did it on her laptop. We had a laptop, and on that laptop were a lot of photos from our wedding, which was 11 years ago. And I was defragging the hard drive because the computer was running extremely slow. So I plugged it into the wall because I thought if I just leave it just running on battery, it will run out very quickly, and you know that will destroy the computer. Didn't want that, so I plugged it in. I thought this is going to take a while. Plonked the laptop on the sofa next to me and got up to walk away. And my foot got caught in the power cable. The power cable came out of the computer, and that led to a complete and utter catastrophe. It killed the hard drive. And I tried. I think I had the computer switched on for like an entire week, 24 hours a day, using some recovery software to try and recover data from it, but it was too badly damaged. So I lost quite a lot of our wedding photos. Put it this way, my wife was not happy. Martin says, Rich just helped me fix my old Dell. Which OS are you using? There was an issue with a Windows 10 update that was creating all manner of problems with me. Took a bit to figure it all out, but we did in the end. Stereolab says Windows 10 reversed the update as it was causing more unnecessary havoc. Yeah, Windows 10 updates, they're not so good. Sorry, Microsoft, but Windows 10 and your updates and the way that you just kind of force them upon people sucks. Really does. And the fact that, you know, they actually cause major hassle and change major stuff with people's computers is just irresponsible. Windows 7 was probably by far the best OS that Microsoft have come out with since Windows XP. Windows XP was solid as a rock, and Windows 7 likewise pretty solid. So, uh, Frank says, I will never switch to Windows 10 until they take the Windows 7 DVD out of my cold hand. Yeah, you know what? I feel exactly the same way. It's just a shame that a lot of the major software that we use these days is gradually becoming more and more Windows 10 only. You know, they won't even operate on Windows 7 anymore, or they're not supported for Windows 7. That makes me sad, you know, because it's public knowledge that Windows 10 is a bit of a mess, a bit like Vista was. You know, perhaps that's one of the reasons why Bill Gates left. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that Windows was anything to do with it. It might have been. I don't think so though. I think he left so that he could concentrate on his work with his foundation. I think that's probably the majority of what it was. Anyway, let's get back to music production questions because I'm not a computer expert. Sean Aaron says, can you do IRs in Studio One? If so, how? I bought a new distortion pedal. I should be getting it in the mail tomorrow. IRs, do you mean impulse response? Is that what you're talking about? I believe there is a way to do them. I don't know how to do it, but I believe there is a way to do them. I think you need to have Studio One Professional to do it, but I believe there is a way to create impulse responses. But like I say, I don't know how to do that. And MJN says Vista was way worse than 10. You're not kidding. But 10 is like its younger brother somehow. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Not that I use Windows 10. I don't. I use Windows 7. But I know that there are studios that I work with who are either using Mac OS High Sierra and tearing their hair out, or they're using Windows 10 and tearing their hair out too. And Sean Aaron has Pro. That's good. Paul says Studio One has an IR maker, which it does. Martin Weeks says, give Microsoft some time. I'm sure they'll make 10 just as bad as Vista. I have little faith. Yeah, okay. That's cool. Let's move on from talk about Microsoft, please, because I don't want to end up with a lawsuit. And D-Sound says, yeah, them damn forced updates. Yes. Yeah, I'm just as unhappy as you guys, to be honest. And I don't even use Windows 10. But I've been in studios where they do, and I've been in studios where they use High Sierra, and it doesn't matter. They're both not very good platforms. So who knows? Who knows what Windows 11 is going to look like? Hopefully, Windows 11. If they do a Windows 11, they might do a Windows 2018. I don't know what they're going to do. But heck, if they make a Windows 11, I hope to heaven and back that they make it as solid as Windows 7 was, and they learn from how PO'd a lot of Windows customers are with Windows 10. Paul says IR Maker even has a way to send an impulse array signal. Well, that's very cool. I did not know that. No, I know nothing about the IR Maker. Sean Harron asks, what's an impulse array signal? I have no idea. So I'm sure that Paul will answer that question for us shortly in the chat. We've got 18 people in here now, and we are 45 minutes in, which means we've got 15 or so-ish minutes left. And after having the schools off for the whole week, the snow has melted. Well, it's not melted. It's melting. So schools are definitely back open tomorrow, so I will have to be down there bright and early with my kids, like 8 o'clock in the morning. I have to be there because I help the kids in the hour before the school day starts. So not just my kids, like all the primary 1 and primary 2 kids, first and second year primary school kids. I help look oversee them in the mornings, which is very cool. It's a very cool little thing that I do, and I also help with music down there as well. So I'm teaching percussion there, and I'm teaching bass there as well, getting the kids into playing upright bass. So they're playing little half-sized upright basses, which is very cool. Martin says IR impulse response. It's a very cool way of basically recording the sound of an environment or an effect created in an environment, and then using that. So like when you put that on a vocal track, it's hard to explain. Actually, there you go. Paul has got an explanation. He says it. Oh, he's talking about the array. Okay. Yeah. So basically, an impulse response is like recording the sound of a room and then using that as an effect, so that when you put the impulse response onto your track, say it's a vocal track, the vocal track then has the sound of that room. So all the acoustic properties of that room. It's like modeling the sound of that particular space. And MGN says it simulates an actual room, and that's what's considered an impulse response. Yes, and you can do that with guitar amps as well. You can have IR impulse response of specific guitar cabinets in specific environments. So yes, if you wanted to, you could go into Westminster Cathedral. You could stand under the Great Dome of Westminster Cathedral, St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Stand under the Great Dome with a microphone, sample the sound of that room, and then bring that into the IR maker. Deer Creek says they're used in convolution reverbs. The IR is a photo of the room using a sound, and then the IR is loaded into the convolution reverbs. Yes, and speaking of convolution reverbs, Presonus has a whole bunch of them in the Presonus shop that you guys should really check out. There are some absolutely gorgeous plate reverbs that you can get, and they sound amazing. Try putting them alongside the Abbey Road plate reverbs, and you'll see just how good quality they really are. They're fantastic. Okay, another tea break. Alrighty. Deer Creek says there are zillions of free IR on the web, from Taj Mahal to oil cans. Yes, there are. Frank asks a very interesting question. He says, do studio musicians in the UK still make a good living? Yes, you can do. Here's the thing. Whichever country you're in, whether it's Germany, France, Switzerland, the UK, the United States of America, here's the thing. The modern music business is much different than it was 20 years ago. 23, 24 years ago, which is when I started my professional career. It's much, much different. Especially now that we have the explosion of home studios, which is why we're all here, because we all have home studios and we like to make music using, things like interfaces and DAWs and that kind of thing, which just simply weren't really there. They just simply weren't really around. They weren't really very available unless you had quite a lot of money. I mean, I remember my first home studio that I built in 1999. And that cost about £4,000 or £5,000 to build that. And that was to have a computer that was going to be fast enough to run Cubase, which is what I was running at the time, and to have all the plugins that I wanted to have at that time that were available at that time. So yeah, it's a completely different industry now because of home studios. So I make a living as a studio musician from right here in this room. And that's because of the internet. The internet back in 1999 was hideous. There is no way I could have recorded a bass track and send it off to a client in Israel in 1999. It would take days just to load the thing up. And then it would take days for the client in Israel to download it and then bring that file into whatever software they were using. But now in 2018, I can upload a track in almost instantly. I can play my bass part. I can bounce it in Studio One so that I bounce the amp sound and my EQ and compression chain. Bake those. Oops. Smack my pop filter. I'll sort this in a second. Bake those into the track, and then I just drag it straight into the folder that I've set up for my client. Off it goes. Dropbox. And then, a short time later, maybe, depends on the speed of my internet and the speed of theirs, but anything between 5 and 10 minutes later, they've got my track and they can drag it straight in to whatever DAW they use, and there it is. And I can do that. I can send out 4 or 5 or more bass tracks in a day if I need to, if I want to, or piano parts I can do, or a guitar. I don't play guitar that much, but hey, I've got this beautiful Ibanez guitar. Or saxophone. I've got my alto sax. I could, if need be, I'll do an alto sax part. I don't do those very often. I do those extremely rarely, because I'm just not quite to the high standard I set for myself yet on the sax. But yeah, I can make a living pretty reasonably. It all depends upon how how much time I want to invest in reaching out to clients, in sending out demos, and all that kind of stuff, and how much time I have available to do bass parts and stuff. Now, I still go out and work in other studios. Like, when I get the call to go and work on a film score, I will go to whichever studio that happens to be to go and play the film score, because those are usually cut live. So Deer Creek says, have you ever been to Abbey Road? Yes, I've been many times to Abbey Road. I have recorded there, in fact. I have been on several film scores in my career, and some of those have been recorded at Abbey Road. Not all of them. Some of them have been. The other big studio in London is Angel Studios, and I've been there a lot for film scores, for playing on other musicians' records, that kind of stuff. So yes, I have been to Abbey Road, and yes, I've. Do they still have some of the old equipment on display? They most certainly do. You can do a tour of Abbey Road, and you can actually go into the studio where the Beatles cut a lot of their records. Any films we might know? Not really. maybe. All right, I'll let you have one. I was on the first Pirates of the Caribbean film score. And I I don't play a particularly big role on it, but I am definitely on that film score. I had a very short little passage to play, and so I came in and I just did that for one day, and that was me done for that film. But I've been on I've been on quite a lot of independent films because they, independent films or foreign films like French films, they need a film score, and so they come and do their film score at Abbey Road. Um, and there have been some other major films that I've been involved in that I have never seen. But the interesting thing is, when a major film premieres, the orchestra usually get invites to the premiere. So if that's at Leicester Square in London, quite oftentimes we would the orchestra would get invited to go to the premiere screening. Martin Weeks, Abbey Road, EMI one in the same or different actual studios? Kind of. Abbey Road is the road where the studio is located, and it is actually called Abbey Road Studios. But I do believe that EMI, at least at one stage, owned it. I think actually there's a lot of owners now. In fact, there was a while back where Abbey Road was struggling financially, and there was a time when you could actually invest in the studio and you could actually own a part of it. I was one of those that invested because that studio has been good to me in the past. So yes, I invested a small amount of money in the studio. I think I probably own maybe 4 or 5 bricks of the studio. But a lot of people did the same, and so I get a small, tiny little return on that investment every year, which is nice. Dear Cree says, would you use PSO on a self-created film score? Yes, I would. I think it's really good quality. Is it up there with the Vienna? No. Is it up there with some of the other bigger named orchestral libraries? No, it's not. But at the price point that it is at, it is the market leader. Absolutely no doubt about it. The PreSonus Symphonic Orchestra is the market leader for that price bracket. It's way better than anything else out there at that price bracket. But it is not up there with some of the bigger names like the East West Orchestra and some of the other bigger libraries. It's just not up there. And you know what? I don't think it was ever meant to be. I don't think they ever set out to make it like that. I could be wrong, and maybe somebody will from PreSonus will correct me on that, and that's fine if they do. Martin says BFI, the British Film Institute. I know a gentleman named Chris Sidor has been checking out my playlist. Can't find any detailed info on him by chance. Do you know him or of him? No, I don't. The Rocket says Abbey Road used the EMI DES. Yes, they did. The Abbey Red console is possibly what you're thinking of there. Also, Google EMI puts Abbey Road Studios up for sale. It kind of was at one time. It isn't sold. It was rescued, which is what I'm kind of talking about. Deer Creek says, read PSO. Price isn't the issue, but used properly, it sounds as good. Yes, it does, but you don't get nearly as many articulations and you don't get quite so wide a variety of different options as you would in some of the bigger named ones. Like some of the bigger named ones, you know, there's a reason why they are $600, $700, $800, $900. You know. Let's see. Let's see what else we've got. D-Sound Recording Studio, this hour goes too quickly. Would you consider a 2-hour slot? I would. However, the issue is the time zone difference, because right now it is 1 o'clock in the morning here. So, you know, not really wanting to go too late into the morning, especially when the next morning I have to be down at my kids' school very early. Let's see. N/N says, how often do you live stream? Every week on a Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Time. Unless I'm unable to, in which case I won't. And usually I'll put out some kind of notice saying no live stream this week or whatever. Have I ever used Keyscape? No, I haven't. Deer Creek says $900 is cheap. Go price a sax. As you know, yeah, absolutely. Compared to a saxophone, any of the big name orchestral libraries are super cheap. Oh yes. My alto is probably, I don't know how much it's worth because I never paid anything for it, but that's a whole nother story. It's probably worth, we had it valued actually, and it's worth about 800, 850 maybe. 850 pounds, that is. Which is, I'm not quite sure what that is in dollars, but it's over $1,000. Paul says, don't some of those other libraries require multiple computers to run? Some do. Some of the really huge ones do. You know, because they will have been captured in incredibly intense detail with lots of mics from lots of different perspectives and points of view, combinations, and everything else. Stereo 62, fave Beatles album. I don't know. I quite like the Revolver record. I quite like Sgt. Pepper's. Funnily enough, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, I think, is a very, very, very intricate and clever record in a lot of ways. Pioneering recording and mixing techniques, pioneering arranging techniques, and George Martin really shows off his skill, not just as a producer, but as a really outstanding arranger, which is kind of where he got his start in the business. He was not just, you know, a producer, and he wasn't just a mix engineer. He was an arranger as well. He actually hand wrote charts for the strings and horns and stuff that were on that record. Deer Creek says, I've got a $3,000 banjo. You're a nutter. I'm kidding. N/N says, what's your thoughts on the new Spitfire hand strings with the integration of, I'm not really sure what that says, AU system and leaving contact? Yeah, I heard about that. Big bold move. I guess we'll have to see how that works out for them, to be honest. Martin says, speaking of production work, what is meant by A&R/music supervisors for TV film when they are seeking beds? A&R people are the people that are given the job of collating music to be used as a bed in a film or in a TV show in a particular scene. And a bed is the music that goes in the background, on top of which goes the dialogue and the sound effects for that particular scene. And your music can turn up in a whole plethora and variegated different ways as a music bed. For example, true story, there's a soap opera here in the UK based in Manchester called Coronation Street. It's the longest running soap opera in the world. And there is a sync licensing company here in the UK that I sent some of my music to. And one of my songs cropped up on a radio in a scene on that show. So they had given my music the telephone effect, so it sounded like it was coming out of a transistor radio in that particular scene. It was hilarious. I thought it was really funny, really innovative use of my music. I was totally fine with it. You know, I got the check as a result, and that was all okay. But you know, your music is not designed necessarily to be completely, you know, sat down and listened to when you supply your music for a music bed. It's meant to support the dialogue and the interaction between the characters in that particular scene. Dacre says, do you agree the trick to Persona Symphonic Orchestra and the like is in the use and the writing? Do what the program can do and not try what it fails at. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You have to make the best out of what it can do. And where it falls short for your needs, you have to learn to improvise. You have to learn to be creative within limitations. And to be honest, being creative within limitations is where you are at your creative best. It's just a fact. That's just how we work as human beings. Give us a bunch of limitations and we will perform better than anybody else. You know, it's just how we work. Put somebody under intense pressure to create something. Say, hey, I want you to write a song, record it, mix it, master it, and have it done by, you know, in 3 days' time. Because that's your deadline. That's when you need to have that song released. Because it needs to, you know, it needs to go off to a sync licensing company or something. Then you do it. You perform under pressure. Dacre says, you're right. My buffet is $3,500. My tenor alto sax, $5,000 each. But brand doesn't matter. It's the quality. Yeah, absolutely. Mine is my alto, I believe, is a knockoff, or it's a copy. It's not really a knockoff. It's a copy of a Selma Mark VI from the 1930s, I think. Let's see. Hang on a second. I'm going to wrap this up in a minute. I've allowed us to go over by 10 minutes. Dacre says, have you ever been to the Thomann Music? I don't know where it's at, but it's the Sweetwater of Europe. Yeah, they are a German-based not manufacturer, but yes, they are. I believe they're German-based, and yes, you're right. They are the Sweetwater of Europe. Incidentally, there is a Sweetwater UK now. I've not dealt with them or anything like that as yet, but I'm sure I will do in the future. Stereolab says, film scoring incredibly technical. Yes, it is. You have to record, you have to write to the picture, and you get the time codes and everything else. So when you're writing, everything has to be to a very specific time frame. So, for example, I've done cues where the cue is exactly 6.25 seconds long. And the piece of music that I write for that has to be exactly 6.25 seconds long. It cannot be longer, it cannot be shorter. And you ideally want it to have, you know, not, you ideally need it to not have to be edited. That didn't really make any sense, but that's probably because it's 1 o'clock in the morning. But I think you know what I mean. You need to basically have that 6.25 seconds as complete as possible. So it doesn't need edited. It doesn't need fade in, fade outs or anything else. Let's see. What do I think of Jan Hammer? I love his tone, actually. And his music's pretty good. He can be a little bit saccharine at times, but that's unfortunately that's the nature of that, of, you know, fusion music. Can be a little bit too smooth and a little bit too buttery and a little bit too schmaltzy. I like my fusion music to be on the cutting edge and innovative and, plays around with what's acceptable and what's not, generally. N/N says, do you mix your stuff? Yes, I do. And if you do, what's your favorite innovative plugins? You know what? I use the Slate Digital Everything Bundle because those plugins are outstanding. I use Waves. I've been a Waves fan for over 20 years, although I did take a 15-year break where I didn't use their plugins at all. I didn't use anything except stock plugins for 15 years. I was given a bet, actually. You may not know this story. Some people will. Somebody made a bet with me that I couldn't mix just using stock plugins. So I did. And, they said, I bet you couldn't do it for a year. All right, you're on. So I did it for a whole year. 12 months. No stock, no third-party plugins, no Waves. I had to just use the native ones to Cubase because that's what I was using at the time. And I kind of forgot to stop. At the end of the year, I didn't go back to my Waves plugins. And then I bought a new computer. In fact, I bought several new computers in those, and never really got around to reinstalling my Waves plugins. And then like 15 years later, I suddenly went, you know what? I kind of forgot I was on this plugin fast. I maybe should go back. So I went and bought some new Waves plugins. And then a very good friend of mine very kindly, very generously bought me the Slate Digital Everything Bundle for a year, which is cool. Paul is on his way. That's very cool. Very good to have you here. D-Sound says, seen some great plastic brass instruments on YouTube. Anyone played them? I played a plastic trumpet. Charlie Parker used to play a plastic alto for a while. He's probably the first. Yes, I have played a plastic trumpet, and it sounds pretty good, actually. It's not going to sound the same as brass because brass has a unique timbre, a unique tone to it. Plastic's never going to have that, but it'll still do the same job. Let's see. I'm going to finish up these questions in a minute. Frank says that, yeah, had a good sound. Just keep checking the pads. Yes. Stereolab says, do I have a favorite film score? I have several, actually. I would say E.T., John Williams. I would say Titanic, James Horner. Apollo 13, again by James Horner. Let's see. The Indiana Jones films, all John Williams. I would say John Williams is probably the film composer that has had most influence upon me. That said, Hans Zimmer, who did the Batman movies and the Pirates of the Caribbean, and he's done one or two others as well. I think he did Pirates of the Caribbean. He didn't. I mean, the one that I was on, he didn't conduct, so I never met him. I never saw him. He wasn't conducting that, so it was somebody else whose name escapes me right now. Actually, I can't remember who conducted. But yeah, Hans didn't actually conduct his own score on the first Pirates film. N/N says, wow, since you have so much knowledge, have you ever used Logic or Logic X? And if you do, which DAW would you recommend to someone who's been using Mac and wants to use Windows? Well, if you want to use Windows, don't use Logic because Logic doesn't work on Windows. Apple bought them out years ago and pretty much turned Logic into GarageBand Pro, my opinion. I quite liked Logic, and I nearly switched. I very, very nearly switched from Cubase to Logic, and then Apple bought it, and that was that. Jazz is here. He says, hi, Johnny. Good to see you, mate. Just finishing, actually, I'm afraid. Do, 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 do. Okay, I'm going to finish with this last parting sentence. Deer Creek says, I was going to say John Williams as well. Yes, his strings. Oh, man, oh, man. Yeah, but it's not just the strings, Deer Creek. It's the way he uses brass. And the interplay between the brass and the upper woodwinds. John Williams was clearly fairly influenced by Gustav Holst in his understanding of orchestration. So let's see. So Cubase Pro or Reaper. See, I'm the only DAW I'm going to recommend is the one that I'm using. Because that's the one that I use now. It's the one that works well for me. There are lots of DAWs. Find one that fits you. Write down a list of what you need a DAW to do. What features you actually need, not ones that you want, ones that you actually need to make your music work. And then go through all of the DAWs and find the DAW that most fits those requirements. And once you've done that, purchase that DAW and stick with it. Learn that DAW inside out, backwards, forwards, upside down, every which way you possibly can with that DAW, and work with it so that it becomes an extension of your music. So that basically the DAW is an instrument that you play. It's not, it's not just a DAW. That would be my opinion. So whether that's Cubase, Reaper, Logic, GarageBand, I don't really care. Mixcraft, who cares? As long as you make freaking music and you don't allow a DAW or learning a DAW to stop you from making music. If it's hindering you from making music, don't use it. And, the Presonus guys are probably going to kick my ass for saying this, but, and that includes Studio One. I use Studio One. I'm an evangelist for Studio One. I am passionate about Presonus and Presonus products, but you have to use what is going to work best for you. If that's not Studio One, that's fine. There are other DAWs out there. D-Sound Recording Studio says, before you go, I seem to miss your live streams. Advertise more on the groups. I do, usually. I didn't today because I was running horrendously late today. I actually nearly didn't make it for doing the stream. So as soon as I got in here, I was just like, fa-ching, I've got to get on. Deer Creek says, I'm pumped for Studio 4. Studio One 4. Yes, you're not the only one. Who knows when we will see it? I have absolutely no idea. I don't know. Could be this year, could be next year. Who knows? Well, I know who does know. But I couldn't tell you when it's going to come. All I know is it's going to come. It's going to come. It's inevitable. And when it comes, it will probably be absolutely mind-meltingly awesome. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap this up. N/N says, that's why I'm asking you. I actually need Logic features, but I think Cubase is much better than... Well, I'm an ex-Cubase user. I used Cubase for more than 20 years. And as every year went past, I'll tell you, I got more and more fed up with it. And more PO'd at how bloated it was. And with every update that they did and with every upgrade that they did, it got worse. Yes, they added a lot of pretty nice new features, but they added those at the expense of something that is solid, dependable, reliable. Yes, there are some features in Cubase that are missing in Studio One, but do you know what? Does it stop me from making music? No. I put an EP out in 2016. I had a single out this year. This year, I'm going to have another EP out. Next year, I'll have another EP out. I write for other artists. It doesn't stop me. I use what Studio One can do and what it can do now to make music. And that's it, really. So I'm sorry if that's not really the answer you're wanting. If you're wanting me to go, oh, well, Logic's got this and Cubase has got this and Pro Tools has got that and Ardour has got that and Sonar has got this. To me, that doesn't make sense. You don't hop round. You find the one that suits you best and you use it. And you make music. Buy a flipping tape machine. So why make the change from Cubase to Studio One Pro? I just told you. Studio One got Studio One. Cubase just got bloated. It became obese. It is an obese DAW because it has legacy code from 30 years of development. That's how they do it. Every time they do an update or every time they do an upgrade, they don't delete code, they add to it. The guys at Presonus learned that lesson and they don't do that. So, Studio One 3 that we've been using since 2015 is a complete rewrite of the DAW. It's completely different to version 2. Yes, it has some of the same features, some of the same things. Drag and drop is still there. A lot of things that we're familiar with are still there, but essentially it is a complete rewrite. They made the code faster, leaner, sleeker. It's a completely new code base. So there you go. And you know what? We've been on for over an hour and a half now. So I'm gonna have to cut this short, I'm afraid, n/n. But feel free to email me, okay? And we can carry on this little dialogue, and maybe we can come to some kind of conclusion that's going to help you. So there you go. And somebody said something about Sonar being bloated as well. Deer Creek says, yeah, but when they got into the X series, they rewrote the code. Yeah, I'm sure they probably did. All right, folks, I'm going to bid you all a very good night now because it is now 1:25 and I have to be up at about 6:30 with my kids. All right, so I will see you all very soon. And n/n, I apologize if I appear to be coming off aggressive. That's not my intent. I'm just, it's something I'm passionate about, making sure that you have the right tools that are going to serve you best, that are going to help you make the best music now. Not the best music tomorrow, but the best music now. That's my passion. And that's entirely why Jonny Lipsham Studios exists, is to help you guys get to the point where you're making the best music you can make now, and you're not waiting for, well, if I learn X and if I learn Y and if I learn Z, if I learn everything else, then I'll get to make music. No, I want to help you guys make music now with what you know now. So there you go. I will stop preaching. That's my other job. All right, guys. I'll speak to you all very soon. Take care. Good night.